Some of my teachers, they say, why do you want to do education? Don't become a teacher like me. You'll earn very little. One of my aims is that in the future, people don't have to question identities anymore. Hi everyone, my name is Tracey. I'm a doctoral student in the University of Oxford in the Department of Education. My thesis or my doctoral project centered around the issue of education and diversity, and the title of the project is about accommodating the vision of unity and diversity in different school contexts, looking at Indonesia as the case study. I'm also currently a member of board directors in an educational foundation in North Sumatra, Medan, and also a member of board directors in an environmental organization also based in Medan. When I was younger, okay, I'm still young, hopefully. When I was younger, I always thought that I was going to be a scientist or a doctor because that's what society expected you to do, right? If you did well in school and if you chose science stream during your high school, most likely your teachers are going to recommend you to become a scientist, engineer, doctors, those considered as more prestigious jobs. My father, who was a medical doctor, also had this very secret dream that I would pick up where he left off, basically. However, they could not be more wrong. My father, who was a doctor, decided to abandon his career altogether and instead open a school for economically deprived students by asking loan from many banks at that time. He worked extremely hard to realize his dream. Eventually, my parents managed to secure some loan and establish a school in an outskirt of Medan, North Sumatra, in 1987. And that's actually the year when I was born. So now you know my age, okay? But without me realizing it, I grew to love, I guess. I have grown up watching my father and my mother struggle to fund the school's operation and then how they manage it as well. I have been very much involved in the school development as young as I could remember. I would spend almost many of my weekends teaching and hanging out in school, speaking to teachers, listening to education-related and politic-related discussion. My father was an activist as well at that time. When I was 14, I then started teaching English and music for the children in the school's neighborhood and also students in the school who came mostly from economically deprived backgrounds. So when it came to, when you had to choose what to do in your university, I realized that actually I didn't want to become a scientist or like a doctor or a mathematician, even though at that time I was prepared for like mathematics Olympiads in my schools, or like I joined the biological Olympiad extracurricular as well. But I realized that I wanted to learn more about educational theories, of how to make school better, of how to make Indonesian education better. Some of my teachers, they say, why do you want to do education? Don't become a teacher like me. You'll earn very little. It's a bit ironic coming from a teacher. Education was very much a second-class subject and it was not a sexy topic. And it was actually verified when I was doing my doctoral degrees. Whenever I asked teachers in the very beginning, when I introduced myself, I asked them, why do you want to become teachers? And most of them, they said that, I just happened to become teachers because I didn't get into the universities I want. I couldn't get into the program I wanted. I couldn't get a job within the field. That's why I become a teacher. If we kind of look at Indonesian education system generally, the governments, policymakers, they mostly did not study education and were never working even in education fields. And how could you implement a good education system? How could you teach students to become better if people who are involved in the field are not expert or are not passionate about education? I felt like there was a call. There was a call for me to dedicate my life and be committed to develop Indonesian education further. The school itself was founded based on, I think, bittersweet experiences. It's not a secret anymore. I look very Oriental. right? So as a Chinese minority in Indonesia, my dad, he was born in 1960. So he was brought up during the times of many political uncertainties. He had to experience this traumatic event in 1965, where many Chinese people were attacked. Many were killed for various reasons. He was also born as someone who was very, very poor, and he could not go to school, could not get into the university that he wanted because he didn't have the money, that's one. And secondly, he was a Chinese. He wanted to have a revenge positively by establishing this school with two missions, which is one, providing good quality education for everyone, regardless their socio-economic backgrounds, and then foster diversity in Indonesia and hopefully worldwide as well. Something that I also wanted to point out is not about only the negative experiences, but we've also experienced the positive relationships. So during the 1965, my father actually witnessed many of his neighbors' houses were burned down in this Chinese village. One of the very few that was left alone was my grandparents' house. It was protected by people who were not Chinese, who felt strong bonds with my dad's family, I guess. So bitter as in, yes, we shouldn't ignore the fact that there are social injustices that still persist in Indonesia and everywhere. Like, look at what happened in the US, in the UK with, the Black Lives Matters movement and all of that. So it still persists. It's not exclusive only in Indonesia, but at the same time, with any kind of tragedy or any negative event, we always see that people come together. There is this sense of togetherness as well. And personally, I experience more positive instead of the negative things. But if I talk to my friends who live in Chinatown areas, they would say differently. Their parents who were businessmen, often the only encounter they had was with people who always asked for money. And that's why I couldn't blame them as well if they had some sort of traumatic experiences or if they wanted to distance themselves from certain groups. But in any kind of event, it's very important for us to kind of, okay, yes, of course there are negative things that are happening, but also there are so many beautiful, positive relationships that come out of people who come from two very different backgrounds. When we are talking about multicultural education, first, it's not only talking about the negative thing, but it's also about fostering the positive relations, the harmony, intercultural understanding in order to promote the more positive aspect of the intercultural relationships. And secondly, it's not only about ethnicity and religion or race, it's also about the issue of gender, the issue of different economic backgrounds, maybe disabilities as well, which are considered as, marginalized. I'm sure like every one of us actually have experienced this, like whether you are in the positions of majority, whether you are in the positions of minority. Something that I've learned as well through my experience and from my research, that one's position is never fixed. You can be a majority when you are in a room full of people who are of the same gender, who are of the same socio-economic backgrounds. In the case of maybe, I would say, a Muslim, in Indonesia generally, they are considered as the majority. But when they visit, say Bali, they become a minority. When they visit the UK, they become the minority. So there's always this dynamic, changing nature of identity, of how sometimes you can be positioned as majority and sometimes you can be positioned as minority, and the multiplicity of identities as well. If you are a Muslim, but you are a woman, you're also a minority when it comes to gender. So with multicultural education, it's all about being more nuanced, understanding identity in a more nuanced way, and trying to not only capture one aspect of diversity or one aspect of identity, because we cannot segregate and pigeonhole people just based on one aspect. It's also about finding that identity. Academically, they call it this hyphenated identity. As someone who is a Chinese Indonesian who has been exposed to more global values, I may not be the same as Chinese Indonesians who have lived in Indonesia for a long time. Some people call third culture kid or something like that. Are you Indonesian? Are you not Indonesian? You don't look like Indonesian, though, like in terms of your value or your attitudes or your behavior. I was actually very much into this because I was always searching for that answer of why my surname is different. If you look at my surname, Harjatanaya, people would always ask me, where are you originally from? And even in Indonesia, if you Google my name, literally, people who have that surname would be only me and my siblings. My dad invented that surname because at that time, during the time when I was born, during the New Order era, we could not use our Chinese name. We have to Indonesianize our name. That's why in Indonesia, if you were Chinese, then your Chinese surname would be disguised in some form. So my Chinese surname is actually Tan. I can't speak Chinese. Ethnic-wise, I'm Chinese. I'm an Indonesian. If you look at my name, right, Harjatanaya, I always struggle because it's very long for once. And people always ask me, where are you originally from? Because they cannot pinpoint where I'm originally from. One of my aims is that in the future, people don't have to question identities anymore. Identity can be as dynamic as you want. It doesn't need to be fixed. Even within a Chinese community, you shouldn't just say that, oh, you are not acting like a Chinese Indonesian, because everyone is different. At a personal level, I want everyone feel comfortable in their own skin without having to be penalized or feeling guilty for being who they are. So that's one. But if we are talking at more macro level, there are 3 findings from my thesis, which I think still pertinent in contemporary Indonesian education. So the first one is that teachers need to be supported through continuous professional development programs to help them incorporate multicultural values within their teachings. It's not that they are not committed to promoting diversities, but sometimes they just don't know how. They are not supported. They are not trained to do that. They assume that they can do that. Head teachers, as the school leaders, also need to be supported so that they could create transformative school in terms of like school policies and practices, as well as school culture that can accommodate this vision of unity in diversity, or Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. And the third one, which I found quite fascinating, is that there are individuals in my research, teachers, students, head teachers, who have practiced agency and become local heroes, change makers within their community, within the schools, in promoting and implementing the spirits of unity and diversity. This means that there are potential to truly embrace diversity in Indonesia and truly make diversity an asset for Indonesia. Based on these 3 findings, I'm currently establishing a new foundation. I want to do a little bit more. Even though since 2012, we have been invited by Indonesian government to talk about our school concept. We have also produced a book where we write in details how we implement multicultural education in schools, in classroom, in different subjects. But I just feel it's not enough. Hopefully, Nusantara Innovation Forum would support me in this. Supports to help teachers and teachers be school leaders that can consciously and systematically implement holistic whole school approach multicultural education. Because at the moment, many people say, yeah, I've done it, but it's not structured. It's not consciously planned. So I want to help them in making it more systematic. That's for head teachers and teachers. Another element is that this foundation also aims to develop students' and teachers' knowledge and skills in conducting action participatory research so that they could learn to analyze problems around them critically and then come up with potential solutions. If you are passionate about a certain topic, you'll read a lot about it. When you are passionate about something, you'll try your best to address the problems And that kind of excitement of wanting to do something for your surroundings based on the research findings, so scientific findings, would make the decision-making process and the solutions offered a little bit more critical, a little bit more effective, hopefully. In Indonesia, we know that current government really want to push this whole student-centered critical thinking. But then if the students from the very beginning are not intrinsically motivated, or even if they don't feel like they belong to the community, if they don't feel like they can do something, they're not going to do anything about it. But if you try to make them be a change makers, then they will act like a change maker. I truly believe that there are so many students, young people, teachers who actually can drive changes, because education at the end of the day is a very integral part of the society. If you want to make any changes in society related to social injustices and all of that, I truly believe that schools are the place to build these change makers. Hopefully with collaboration of Nusantara Innovation Forum. When I first encountered NIF through Lilis and Pak Aye at that time, I'm someone whose work lies within the field of education and development. I believe in the power of knowledge sharing. I believe in the power of collaboration for development and empowerment. Education is a microcosm of society and it permeates all aspects of lives. And so everyone is part of this world of education. Anyone could help make an education system in Indonesia or elsewhere better. NIF becomes a platform where people from different walks of lives, professions, where the conversations and hopefully the collaboration will take place. I learned that central to NIF goal is the acceleration of Indonesian development through research and innovation, which is something that I truly on board in. And with my newly established foundation, I really want this spirit of innovation, this spirit of research being embraced by these Indonesian young people. So yes, I think my vision and NIF vision is quite similar in this way. I feel like I have gained a lot from being in NIF. I hope that other people, particularly young people in Indonesia, would also gain insights from these experts in the field, that they have role models to become someone inspiring, the future member of NIF. I'm hoping that more young people would listen more to the stories and be inspired, because I think one of the things that I figure out from working quite closely with mostly students who come from underprivileged backgrounds, they don't have role model to look up to. They only know what's happening around them. If you come with me and go to classrooms with children in remote areas, if you ask them, what's your cita-cita, right? What's your ambition? They'll always say that policemen, if they are boys, doctors. You'll never hear anyone who say, I want to become a designer or web developer. They are the typical professions that people always tell them to do. Policemen, doctors, presidents, right? Everyone wants to become president, which is great. But that one was when you ask the little kids. But when you ask 15 to 17 or 18, many men would say that I want to get a job. They just want to have enough money, but they are not surrounded by people who can support them in terms of getting what they want. I have many students who are happy. This is not to dishonor or disrespect the jobs, okay? Because they have their own roles in the workforce, but they feel proud already that they don't end up like their parents, becoming the pedicab driver or becoming a helper at home. They are happy by being a cashier in a supermarket, whereas they actually can do much more than that. And the women, they would generally think about marriage in very young age, because they feel like rather than me doing no good, becoming a burden of my parents, I'd rather just get married if I can't get a job. Okay, I'm sorry it's a bit derailing, but one of the students I talked to, he's a guy, he wanted to become a chef. When he said that he wanted to become a chef, the whole class laughed at him. if you truly look at the most successful Michelin-starred chefs, many of them were actually men. But it's considered as a very feminine job. Eventually, he said to me in private, he said, it's very hard. If I want to pursue my dream as a chef, I would probably be laughed at by many people. So he was considering actually applying for like business or like management, just following his friends. And this is a very common thing to happen in Indonesia. Some students I asked, they wanted to become Miss Indonesia. At the same time, she also wants to become a flight attendant, also wants working in biotechnology. She has these three dreams, but she doesn't know the reality of, or she doesn't know the pathway in order to get to each of that career. And she doesn't know exactly what it takes to be there, because she just simply thinks, oh yeah, becoming Miss Indonesia is nice, right? I'm popular. I want to become a flight attendant because I can fly everywhere I want. Sometimes it's good to open their eyes and windows to other opportunities, the possibilities of what they can do. Having that pool of role model, which I think definitely people who are in Nusantara Innovation Forum would be very useful for this pool of students. Genuinely, I do love this field, and I'm actually very lucky in a way that I can see more and more people nowadays, regardless their backgrounds, they have more concerns about education. This is a proof, right? Nusantara Innovation Forum invited someone to talk about education. Innovative in a way. 10 years ago, education was not a sexy topic. An educator is considered as a rewarding job, meaning doesn't earn a lot of money. That's why it's called rewarding. But at the same time, hopefully it raises awareness of what we could do for education, regardless our professions.